Black lights and booze burn when I record for Watts. And every black like Troy Davis who never had a fair shot. All black everything, everything black. Culture over everything, y'all. We taking it back.
Welcome to Left to Black. This is your host, Mark Anthony Neal, and we are honored today to be joined by the great Abiodun Oyewole, most well known as one of the master teacher griot elders in the arena of Black arts and spoken word, going way back to the beginning of the Last Poets back in 1968.
I understand that time is running out. 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 Running out as hastily as niggas run from the man. Time is running out on our natural habits.
And we're honored to have him join us today to talk about his new recording, his solo album, Gratitude, which was released in February of 2022.
I am not crazy, nor do I live in a world of illusion. I am a man with common sense. I am a human with sensitivities. I will make mistakes, and I will correct them as best I can.
How you doing today, Brother Abiodun?
I'm fine. I'm so no less than blessed.
It has been an incredible and long journey for you. So I have to ask, you have nothing to prove, obviously. You obviously have so much more to give. What was the choice to release Gratitude at this time?
Well, Gratitude came about because I have a grandson that does beats by the computer, using the computer. And I have a son, one of my sons is a lawyer, and that's that's his nephew, because his mother had a child before I met his mother, and she had a son, and so her son became my son, and her son's son became my grandson. So it's by marriage. And they moved from North Carolina to New York some years ago, he and his wife, at a young age in the early 20s. And my lawyer son said that I needed to go visit him because he had some tracks. But I'm a brother that likes real instruments. I'm into real bass, I'm into real drums, real piano. So I didn't, for about a year, I kept avoiding seeing Orlando. His name is Orlando, and I just avoided him. I didn't feel like I wanted to hear any computer music. But I did. Finally, my son got me to go over to his house, and I'm happy I did, because I met his wife, and I call her Smiley because she's got an infectious smile. She's a pretty chocolate girl who's got this fabulous smile. When she's smiling, you want to smile too, because that's just her vibe. And they're like a young couple, but with old spirits. And he played some of his stuff for me. And I was blown away because it really sounded good. It didn't sound like I thought it would sound. It didn't sound like it was some fake music. So my lawyer son, Obadele, he actually had my folder with my most recent poems. And so he would pick out stuff that he thought would fit the particular track that we were listening to. And I would do it. And so we went through this process for about 2 or 3 months. We'd go over to his house, and he'd play a track. My son would pick it out. I would record it. And then, unbeknownst to me, the stuff that I'm recording, they're sending it down to Texas to my oldest son, Pharaoh, who was like a little Quincy Jones type guy. He puts music together like crazy. And he dressed it up. He put all the embroideries on it, all the trimmings. And he got his wife, who was a diva, to sing on there in the background. I mean, it was a family project. And I was enjoying the idea that it was all family involved. Everybody involved was blood related, because I have a lot of talented folks in my family. And so the project just started growing on its own. And as it grew and everybody was falling in love with it, my mother, she also knew that I was doing this. So she said, what's happening with this project you're doing with the family? What do you call it? And I didn't have a name for it. I mean, I was just going back and forth to Randall's house and putting down some poems over some tracks, and I knew that I had to say something that was going to sound religious and mommy friendly. So I just said, let me I said gratitude. So when I said gratitude, she says, "Oh, that's a great title, and the world needs more of that." And I said, "Oh, that's it. Then there's no question." Because once she signed off on it, it was clear it was going to be gratitude. So that was how that whole thing came to be. And to be honest, as time I would play, before the pandemic, I would have an open house, my house every Sunday, and have artists come over, mainly poets, and I would play different things that I had recorded, or say maybe a show or something, and I would play gratitude. And every week that someone would come back, they say, "Play that album again, play that CD again." So it became a piece, a love offering to the folks who were checking it out. And I started really feeling very good about it. I like the first track on there is called Rain. And it's, to be perfectly honest, it's the only piece I've ever written about my mother and father, because I compared them to the rain, the lightning, and the thunder, and so forth. And it's a piece that's very dear to my heart, primarily because it is all family, and I'm saying exactly what I really wanted to say.
You know, it's interesting, Abiodun, listening to this. You know, there are some folks that when they hear the last poets, you know, they think about this great tradition of protest poetry, right? Going back to niggas are scared of revolution.
Niggas always going through bullshit change. But when it comes for real change, niggas are scared of revolution.
You know, going forward. This is a very different feel in this album, right? It doesn't feel like a protest album. It feels like something else. What were you trying to capture with this album?
I wanted to capture the essence of my life. I think that's where my son was coming from by picking out the pieces. I wanted to just give the inside story of who I am as a person, as a human being. Because a lot of times when you're put in those categories of being a radical poet, you know, folks don't see the soft side. They don't see the humanity. They just see, you know, I'm walking around with a clenched fist, ready to black power you in the face. And the truth is that the fist is clenched when necessary, but my arms are wide open for those that are about love, because I'm really, to be honest, Black people in general are really about love. We've never been militant. We've been given a lot of erroneous tags and labels, but we're a loving group of people. Matter of fact, maybe love is a plus and it's a negative, because we love the wrong things sometimes and cause us to be in a lot of trouble. But I really felt like this was a testament to the humanity in me, and to the love that I have for, like, Harlem, for example. I've always loved Harlem. This is a place that I would see on Sundays, because my folks were members of a church here in Harlem. So Sunday was a special day because I was raised in Queens. So I had to write about that. I had to write about Brooklyn, because as a consultant, and most of my work is in Brooklyn. Brooklyn's got more Black folks than anybody in any other place in the country for that radius. And so, I mean, it covers the road that I've been covering in my life, poetically and socially and spiritually.
Yeah, the brother Questlove, of course, has done this, directed this great film, Summer of Soul, about the Harlem Arts Festival back in 1969. And, you know, we love our brother, but you said in about 6 or 7 minutes all that needed to be said about Harlem in your piece, Harlem.
Harlem, Harlem.
I mean, it's a track that I found myself going back and listening to over and over again.
Harlem is the Black spirit pulsating in the air that we breathe, to live a life of music, of dance, of food, of love.
You know, for folks who don't really understand, you know, what really is the significance of Harlem in the Black imagination?
Yeah, no, Harlem is a citadel for Black culture. There's no two ways about that. I mean, the energy that came when we would come to Harlem on Sundays, brother. I mean, I see those brothers stand up there with their in their fedora hats and their silk sharkskin suits. I used to think that they owned everything. They just looked like they owned the world. There was a certain kind of Black arrogance that didn't exist anyplace else. And I remember my aunt told me one time to see that guy stand over there, and he was dressed he was dressed clean. She said he sleeps in his Eldorado. I said, what? How could you sleep in your Eldorado? But the folks give you the impression in Harlem that they are in charge. They're unapologetically Black, and the culture is thriving in Harlem. And it's a place that, I mean, it's no mystery that the Apollo Theater, which is probably the most known theater in the country, is in Harlem. You have to come through this way in order to really be successful. The tour buses that come into the city, the first spot that they want to come to is Harlem. So you have hope. And now, of course, Harlem is going through, like all the other Black places, are going through this regentrification. It's like when we get a hold of a piece of land, it seems that we nurture it to the point where it makes it really kind of palatable for other folks to come and try to feed off of that nurturing. And so that's what's happening here in Harlem as well. But Harlem has always been the center of Black thought, Black entertainment, Black love, Black food. I mean, it's become that place where we can really, like that, the Mecca, if you would say, of our existence here in America.
You know, Abiodun, you've been doing this, you know, obviously for a very long time. That, you know, you're part of a last generation that's standing, you know, really from that watershed moment in the late 1960s and early 1970s. When you got to Harlem, you know, at that point in time, when the Last Poets launch, you know, that Malcolm X Day, 1968, who were some of the artists that you were looking at for inspiration at that time?
Well, you know, Sonia Sanchez and I have had a chance to have a conversation at the Schomburg, which is a cultural center here in Harlem. It's like the only real center that kind of gives you the details of certain aspects of Black life in America. And it's a beautiful center. And so there's in the auditorium, which is named after Langston Hughes, we had this conversation on stage. The place was crowded. And I had to tell her, I said, you know, you were one of my inspirations, because there was a bookstore in Harlem called the Liberation Bookstore. And it was 132nd and Lenox, which is now Malcolm X Boulevard. And there was a poster in there of this caricature of a sister, and I didn't know who she was. I was like 19 years old. But there was a caricature of Sonia. She had a nice little afro, a nice little body, and she had her hands on her hip. And then she said, what does a white girl have that I don't have? But her white, and I can't say the word on the screen, but she was talking about, you know, what's between her legs. And I said, wow. I said, that's deep. So I said to you, the owner of the books, I said, you could say that in a poem? She said, Sonia can say it. And whenever I mention it to Sonia, she cringes, because the person that put the poster out did it without her permission, and she didn't like that, because Sonia is a woman of class. Matter of fact, she just got awarded at Temple University because she's been a professor there for some time. But she never appreciated the fact that I said, well, even though you didn't like that, it inspired me, because it was right in your face. It was like straight and no chaser. You made it clear that, you know, we shouldn't be chasing after Susie Cream Cheese. And so, and she was an inspiration. And Amiri Baraka, without question, was an inspiration, because I read Blues People, and I thought he was a great poet, and he was a big time inspiration. And having met him, and Amiri had such a nice sense of humor, he had a lot of information, and he was really the one that gave the Last Poets kind of a blueprint as to how we were going to do what we did. So those are two major inspirations poetically. But to be perfectly honest, I've got to go back to Smokey Robinson, because he wrote a lot of the music for Motown, and people don't realize it, but Smokey Robinson's a poet. But if you write lyrics like My Girl and Just My Imagination, come on, that's nothing but poetry put to music. that's always been an inspiration. I think that most of us poets, Black poets, would have to say that music was probably some of the most poetic music we've ever heard in our lives. And even though hip hop is taken over in the last 20 years or so, 30 years, it doesn't match up to the poetry that was produced out of Motown because we're the love songs today. We're not hearing that. And that stuff is the kind of glue that kept us together and kept us sane and kept the families tight and created more families. So, those are inspirations for me, our music. And of course, I've got to include jazz, John Coltrane, Miles Davis, Phil Saunders. And I mean, that because all those cats are poets, but they don't use words to express their thoughts. They use sound to express their feelings, but they're poetic sounds. Matter of fact, I do workshops where I'll play a track by Train and say, now I want you to write in words what he's saying in sound, because we are poets. And then when you look around and you look at Black people, how we do what we do, just the way we walk, how we invent different ways to shake your hand or slap high five or low five. We are living in a world of poetry all of the time. We're constantly accentuating the essence of life itself, and that's what poetry does.
You got a chance to work with a few collaborators besides your family on this album, and I'm thinking in particular the piece that you do with Jay Ivey and also with the great Jessica Care Moore. What was it like with working with other collaborators, particularly younger collaborators?
Well, listen, Jay Ivey's like a son of mine. I love that brother. And he's got a wife that makes a sweet potato pie that's outrageous. And she can burn. That girl can sing. I mean, he is one of the truly good human beings on this planet. Jessica is a monster. Yeah. I met Jessica in Detroit. That's where she's from. We had a gig there, and she came into our dressing room unannounced, opened the door. I said, Jessica, excuse me, young lady, there are men in here. I mean, and you just come busting in. She said, I've seen what men got. I mean, I said, wow. I said, okay. I said, well, what do you want? What are you doing here? She says, I'm going to open for you all. At that time, D. Knowledge was supposed to open for us. God rest his soul. He's no longer with us, Dr. Gilbert. But she said, I said, we got somebody to open for us. She says, he can't do it like I can. I mean, it was really a trip because she's very, very bold.
Yeah.
So we went downstairs to actually do the performance. Jessica was there, and D. Knowledge was bringing us on stage. But Umar stopped him in the middle of his introduction and said, no, we got this girl that's going to open up for us. Because I told her if she could convince Umar that she could open for us, I'll go along with it. So she got with Umar. She's Scorpion, Umar's Scorpion. So I guess they aligned their planets and they worked it out. and she did a poem called Black Girl Juice. Oh, my goodness. It was hot. I mean, to the point where she says, and she talks about how succulent it is and how tantalizing and so forth. She gives you all the sensual stuff in relationship to the juice that Black women possess. And she says, by the way, if you care to ask, I've got some Black girl juice if you have an empty glass. You should see men running up to the stage. So at the end of the evening, I went to her and said, your poetry is hot, honey. I said, I really appreciate your work. I said, here's my number. If you decide to come to New York City, I'll introduce you to the poetry community. So she thanked me. I didn't expect to see her so soon. In about 2 weeks, Jessica was at my door, ringing my bell right here at my door. And I opened the door and saw her. And I said, wow, you came to New York. I said, where you staying? She says, here. I said, here? I said, I got sons, baby. I said, I wasn't inviting you to come stay in my house. She said, but she stayed here for just a couple of months. She got to act together. She got her own place. And then she went and won the Apollo 5 times in a row. Yeah. No one's ever done that. I mean, she's a bona fide superstar poet who I really appreciate and love. And she's like my daughter because that's how she came into the family. My sons loved her. She was a part of the family, and she still is very much a part of the family. Now she has a son Her son's name is King, and I was performing at Trinity College a few years back, and King was like, I guess 8 years old or something, and he was walking behind me. I said, King, what you getting ready to do? So I'm going to do the pledge. I've got this thing called the pledge that a lot of the kids know. It's a kind of an international thing, and he knows it by heart. So he came up on stage to do the pledge. So the beat goes on, and JIV and Jessica are two of my most favorite young poets who I've always been aligned with because of their skills and their personalities.
Folks will remember that, Black spoken word has a long history and trajectory. But the way that we typically think about it these days, of course, is through hip hop.
Right.
And there's no hip hop without you and your generation of artists. You mentioned some of them, Baraka, Sonia Sanchez, Nikki Giovanni, the late, great Gil Scott-Heron, Hakeem Aboudi. I mean, the Watts Prophets. I mean, there's so many folks who are laying the foundations for this thing that we call hip hop now. Having seen hip hop now develop itself for almost 50 years, how do you feel about this thing that you helped to birth?
Well, you know what? Hip hop, I've always said that I really feel hip hop could have been a Rolls Royce of a genre of it, because you got all the space to say all these words, and you get just a little beat in the background, and you're not required to sing on pitch. You're just running some rhymes. You're saying, so you got a whole opportunity to just redo the speech if I have a dream, if you want to. And there's some hip hop artists who I respect because they've used the hip hop genre, they've used it correctly. KRS is one. When he was on his game, he gave us something to think about. I love Rakim because Rakim never got nasty. He kept it funky, he kept it real, and he kept it clean. Yeah. But the funk was always there. I mean, certain people. Chuck D is a good friend of mine. We share the same name. I mean, because my original name was Charles, and they called me Chuck. I mean, and we left. He always introduces me as the original Chuck D. And Nas is another good friend. I know Nas's father, Olu, real well. And when Nas was getting ready to put out his nigger CD, he had gotten some backlash from Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson. So he called me up and he says, listen, I want to do this CD on niggas, and nobody wants me to do it because they want to put that word to bed, and I need a nigga expert. So my father told me to talk to you. I said, well, I'm not a nigga expert, but I'll help you. So I went to the studio and I dropped a bunch of stuff that's on a CD. I said, niggas are like roaches. They're never going to go away. And so there's a whole section called the Roach Project. And we go to Croatia and there's like 100 kids with a CD of me and Nas waiting for me to autograph it. So there's some young folks that I appreciate, but the problem that I have with hip hop is that it's sloppy in many ways. I'm not down with the pants hanging off your butt, the shoes untied, being rude to your elders. When they're walking down the street, don't make the elders walk off the sidewalk to get by. You give them space. You don't make them have to give you space. There's certain aspects of our manners that have been thrown out in hip hop. Hip hop could be, as I said, it should be a Rolls Royce because we have things to say. We're at a moment right now where we're dealing with this virus. We have been dealing with a virus for 400 years and on a lot of different levels. And some poets have addressed the situation and some don't. You cannot take your art and overlook the realities of what your people are going through. You cannot take your art and use it for fun and games and not for change. It's very important. A lot of folks are just going along with the bubblegum and BS because maybe the producers, that's all they really want. And folks don't want to be too politically charged. When you have an art form such as hip hop, it should be a motivating factor. It has motivated young people all over the world. The whole concept of the world nigga has become a rebel as opposed to the whole word nigga itself has evolved. And hip hop has been a part of that evolution because it's no longer that trifling person that we used to refer to, say, keep that nigga away from me. Now you say nigga, It's like saying I'm a rebel. I'm against the system. I'm against all the stuff that you designed for me to be abiding to. And so hip hop has been basically responsible. Matter of fact, hip hop has made the nigga the feature character to the point where I have not been any place on the planet, whether it's in an Asian country or Europe, where folks didn't refer to themselves as niggas. So niggas are all over the place because it's no longer just a racial tag. It's a tag for rebellion, for not exactly going along with things as they are. So hip hop has all that space. It could be saying something to help lead us to a better place. I'm disappointed that some of the hip hop has just been about, well, you know what? I have a statement where I say, in the absence of a movement, the circus comes to town. Mm-hmm. And hip hop has been a part of that circus.
Thank you for that, Abiodun. That was absolutely brilliant, and really critically telling of what's happening in this particular moment. As you've just released Gratitude, is there some more music we're going to hear from you in the near future, I hope?
Yeah, I've got some CDs. I'm doing this little workshop in this hotel of these homeless people. And when I was there last week, one of the sisters wanted me to know that she could sing. And so I said, well, go sing something for me. And the woman has a beautiful voice, but she's down on her luck. She's in a homeless hotel, a hotel for homeless people. And, a lot of times we just kick those folks to the curb. So I told her, I said, you know what, I write songs and I would love to hear you sing one of my songs. So I said, better than that, I'm going to give you a CD that I did that I've never really put out, but it's done. So I have this CD called Love Has No Season, and it's of my love songs. My lady who passed away about 7 years ago, when we go on trips, because all my birthdays were someplace where there was sun, sand, and sea, and I would never have a cassette player or anything, I would sing to her, and they would sing songs that I wrote for her or about her. And so she would get a live concert while we were riding through Barbados or Trinidad or Antigua, or wherever we were. And she said one day, she says, I feel so selfish. I'm hearing all this good music and the world needs to hear it. Onaji Allen Gums and I were very close. I used to go up to his house. He lived in Co-op City. And every morning for about maybe 2 months, and I would share new songs I had written, and he would dress them up and put music behind it, and it was classic, but the stuff has never come out. So yes, I'm looking forward to producing some more stuff, probably this time of my songs.
It's been an honor to talk with you today, Abiodun. We've been talking with Abiodun Oyewole today on Left to Black. I'm your host, Mark Anthony Neal. We've been talking about Abiodun's new recording, solo recording, Gratitude, which was published in February of 2022, and you can access that on all of the platforms that you need to access them on. Thank you, brother Abiodun, for spending some time with us. Do give a shout out to our man, Umar.
I will definitely do that. And thank you, brother, for remembering that.
Yes, sir.
And thank you for being the host for this particular show.
Thank you, sir.
Harlem is a woman doing an African dance, dazzling the crowd in rhythm with her ancestors who danced so long ago. And each movement of her body shifts the earth and stirs the soul of man. You want to travel with her to meet Adam, who protected her.